could work in different parts of the country or different parts of the world. Now you have a different infrastructure. But guess what? You have to manage different, or you have to lead different.
Correct.
And so how do we get people to change? It's a great question, because I've been thinking a lot about that. I do it in my executive coaching when I work with people, right? It's a complete mindset shift change. But how do you make it universal? It will happen over time, but there's some companies that are just not ready for the change.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. Today we're with Mitchell Levy. He is a parallel entrepreneur, and I'm super excited to find out what his definition of parallel entrepreneur is. How are you doing today, Mitchell?
I'm doing great. You actually use parallel entrepreneur. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm actually really curious. And normally I would ask you a whole bunch of background questions about who you are and what your upbringing is, but I like this parallel entrepreneur. So can you explain that to the audience just right out of the gate, so we have a better understanding of what it is that you do for a living?
Well, think about today. We see Elon Musk, who has multiple companies going. Like it is now acceptable for people to have more than one thing going. So I will, in less than 60 seconds, I'll give you a litany of stuff that people call credible. And if you did this in a serial way, you'll go, hey, Mitchell, you must be like 150. Right? So by definition, you have to do it at the same time. So I've been in Silicon Valley for 35 years. I am happily married for 33 years, have a son who's 24. And in Silicon Valley parlance, I'll say he is successfully launched. Since I've been here, I've started 20 professional services firms. I've sat on the board of a NASDAQ company for 9 years. I've run 4 CEO networking groups for a decade. I've created 4 executive business programs at Silicon Valley universities. One of the companies I still have today is a book publishing company. We have published over 750 books. And then what happened for me, what transformed my life, was between 2019 and 2020, I ended up going on a Napoleon Hill inspired journey. And that was to interview 500 thought leaders on credibility. So I've interviewed the 500 thought leaders. I now have a significantly new purpose focused on credibility, and have been deploying that, as well as technically, you could say I have 3 businesses at the moment. So we still have the book publishing. I do executive coaching for C-suite executives. And then the credibility stuff comes in a number of different flavors.
Okay, wonderful. So a parallel entrepreneur would be, I'm running multiple businesses at the same time, but do they complement each other?
So technically I'm going to say, for me, yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say technically they should. Although for some people that I see them doing stuff and they don't. So I'm going to say they do it. For me, it's all about credibility. It's credibility from an executive coach. I work with one person who may manage hundreds or thousands. So that's what I'm doing, is affecting thousands that way. As a publisher, we only work with professionals who want book credibility. They basically want, so I am helping them create a blueprint for them moving forward. And then specifically on credibility, there's probably one of my superpowers is helping people articulate their purpose in less than the human attention span of 4.25 seconds.
Articulate their purpose in under 4.5 seconds. That's amazing.
Pretty cool, huh?
that is a superpower if you can do that. So yeah, I agree. I guess I would be a parallel entrepreneur then, right? But my business
I looked at your stuff. You were definitely a parallel entrepreneur.
Don't necessarily always line up, but I would say that without my boxing gym, I wouldn't be here to do the other businesses. So, it's really hard to say.
Well, when you look at you, think about the elements of what you pull out of the boxing gym. Ignore the particular mechanics of what people do inside. That's tactical. But you
Yep.
look at the bigger picture of what you've been successful at doing, and those skill sets apply across most likely your other businesses. At least I think so.
Yeah, for me, it's my mindfulness, right? I had to have a place that I could be mindful and get rid of all my tech stuff and really just be in the moment. And that gives it for me. I had to own it or I wouldn't go every day. It was very like, I'm not going to exercise every day unless I absolutely have to go there. So I made the decision just buy the gym and be there every single day. So, which I love.
Awesome.
It's not for everybody, but you've got all different kinds of, entrepreneurs and gurus out there today that would, not all of them say the same mantra, right? Gary Vee is one that today is saying, hey, if you like doing a bunch of different stuff, you be you. And you're doing that to keep your own mental health strong. But a lot of other really successful entrepreneurs say, stay in your lane, do one thing, get really good at that one thing and excel at it. Is that an individual journey choice? Or is that like, what is your experience there and this is because you're not just yourself, you're also a business coach helping other CEOs and entrepreneurs do that.
So this answer is a multi-dimensional answer. But let's do the basic: time and money.
Yep.
But if you now add, we'll start with time and money. So if you're doing one business, you're putting all of your time, all of your money into that one business. Okay. Now let's say you do two businesses. Well, theoretically, you certainly don't have all the same amount of time, and you probably don't have unlimited money. So if you're going to put all your time into one business, maybe you put your money to buy more time into a second business, right? Now go to three businesses. So what many people have a hard time doing is outsourcing, having different resources work for them, putting in production, management processes, workflows, the types of things that you don't need to be in your business for your business to run. Lots of people have a hard time doing that. If you have a hard time doing that, then do one thing.
Yeah.
If you can do that. Now, here's what's interesting. We talked about time and money. We're also talking about control. How much control do you want in all of your business? More businesses, less control. One business, more control. How much support do you want? Right? So do you want to have people support you? Do you want to do it all yourself? And so, and let's do a fifth dimension. Okay. Enjoyment.
Yes.
Enjoyment being the fifth dimension is. So
I would say that's the most important one.
If there's anything you're doing and you don't like it, either change it or get rid of it. Right. I often say that about people who have a full-time job and they wanted the entrepreneurs. They want to be an entrepreneur. Actually, let me do this one for a second.
They don't want to be the entrepreneur. They want to be a business owner from a successful business.
Ooh, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what they really want. They don't want to create a business.
Work. To be an entrepreneur, it's a lot of work, right?
You got to be somewhat insane.
And yeah, I'll count me in. I'm in that. I own that title. What often happens is I've probably spoken to well over 30,000 Silicon Valley engineers.
Okay.
Entrepreneurs. Okay. And what they'll often say to me is, "Hey, Mitchell, you've been doing a bunch of businesses. I'm ready. I'm an entrepreneur. How do I get started? What do I do?" And I'd ask two questions. I'd only ask the second question depending on the answer to the first question. The first question is, how many hours a week do you work? And I'm looking for anyone to say less than 70. There are Silicon Valley engineers who work, 70 plus 80 hours a week. I don't say anything after that. If it's less than 70 hours. The next question, how many hours a week do you spend on your entrepreneurial efforts? Now, here's what they say. The entrepreneurs will say the following. Oh, I'm going to wait till I quit my job before I focus on the others. Yeah. And I'm going to say, don't quit your job. Right? Because what happens if you're truly an entrepreneur, let's talk about the coolest thing in the world. Let's say you're working 40 hours a week. You have a financial sponsor. Yeah. That financial sponsor is paying your bills. no matter how your business does, your entrepreneurial business, you have a financial sponsor. If you're only working 40 hours a week, you've got 5, 10, 15, you have a certain number of hours afterwards to play in whatever entrepreneurial effort you have. And at some point in time, when your entrepreneurial effort generates enough revenue where you can replace the financial sponsor, which is somebody else, with you, then you could do your own thing. And most engineers are like, oh, yeah, okay. So then, by the way, mindset change. Are you ready?
Yes.
You're only working 40 hours a week. You have somebody who's a financial sponsor paying all your bill. Don't worry about hating your job. They're your financial sponsor. They're paying you to have all this extra time to do other fun things.
Yes, absolutely. I love that mindset. And I would argue, and I would say, not argue, I was super lucky that I got in with a group of people early in my life that are entrepreneurs, that run companies that are entrepreneurial spirited. And if you can do that, especially in the startup world, engineers and startups, if they can get close to the founder, that founder loves what he does. And he wants generally, the entrepreneurs that I've met want every single one of their employees to start their own company and do their own thing, right? Because we love what we do so much. I scratch my head and think, man, why would you work for me? Why would you work for anybody else? You should be really shooting to be your own boss and have your company and do your own thing the way you would love to do it. But luckily, not everybody has that in their DNA. So we have great employees to do all the work for us. And at the end of the day, we risk our money and livelihood for it, and they trade their time for us. And it's a beautiful thing. So I love that mind shift change to the guy that is working the 9 to 5 that he doesn't love, right? And I assume there's millions of people out there that are doing that today. Billions, I would bet, right? Is that the majority of the planet, you think?
Yeah, it's
about the saddest thing I've heard all day.
It is, unfortunately. We hear this in the older term, the Great Resignation. Yeah. We hear this in the newer term, the quiet
quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting. That's it. I couldn't think about the quitting word. Yeah, the quiet quitting. It's so funny. I just started a TikTok channel, and the one by the way, I didn't do TikTok to be a TikTok superstar, because that's not a goal I'm interested in. I did TikTok because I wanted to encourage my team to force me to do 3 to 5 1-minute videos a week.
Wonderful.
That's it. That's the only. Just think about from a mindset perspective. I don't care how many views we get. I mean, we're getting good views and all that. For some odd reason, I'm in TikTok jail. I don't know why. I didn't do anything wrong, but I can't get new followers. So if anyone understands why that is, let me know.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is I'm using my laptop versus my phone. But I've been producing some really interesting videos. What got me thinking about that is the one that I will be posting today is about a bunch of engineers I met where they are what the current workforce hasn't figured out. Ken, this is probably not you, but what the current management level hasn't figured out, that we now have all these productivity tools. We have these productivity tools in such a way that the person, if we've defined in the past what an 8-hour day is, the people who are good engineers using these productivity tools, they're doing that 8-hour day in 2 hours.
Yes.
Right? HR hasn't come in. Management hasn't come in. The companies haven't come in to reconfigure, because it's still, most of the companies are still in a command and control type setting. This is what you're doing. This is the job you need to do. Go and do it. And so then what the quiet quitting, a lot of times the quiet quitting is what we haven't really thought about is, well, the person is given a full 8-hour day. They just happen to be doing their day in 2 hours. What do they do in the other 6 hours? Right. They're not technically quitting. And by the way, from what I heard in talking to other people, when they ask to do more, management, who's in this command and control thing, are saying no.
Right.
Go figure.
Well, because it doesn't fit into the standard operating procedure, and I fight this nonstop in almost every business that I'm in, people think the standard operating procedure is the concrete, this can never change operating procedure. And I'm like, well, what do you think standard means? It means what happens most of the time, right? This is the 80-20 rule that I don't know why it gets lost in corporate America. Like, this is the only way it can be done. And if you give an engineer, this is how it's done. I mean, lazy engineers make this world the what it is today, right? That's my favorite kind of engineer, is a lazy engineer. Like, he doesn't want to do the work 1,000 times. He wants to do it once. He wants to automate the whole thing away, and nobody has to do it again. And I think that's the kind of people you want on your team, not a bunch of, was it Jetsons that push the button all day? Nobody wants that job, do they?
No.
But that's what we were turning them into. And
not me.
Leaders are scratching their head like, why are they pissed? They don't have to do much. They just push the button all day. Why are they pissed at us? So how do you change the mindset of those leaders to let them know that it's really challenging, because you're like, well, I'm paying them for the 8 hours. I want 8 hours of labor out of them.
No. Right.
Right. That's the mindset of that leader, right? I want my 8 hours of labor. I paid for it. I want it. And they're not giving it to me. How dare them? And instead of, well, I didn't give them 8 hours of fulfillment work to do today.
I think the difference is, now we've always had different words mean different things in society. And for instance, we'll get to this a little bit later, I've redefined, because of the research, what the word credibility means. But I want to talk about the difference between sort of management and leadership, right? So one of the things that we have to do, and when you're talking to somebody, you don't agree, sometimes you may not agree because you don't have a common language. So to create a common language, let's do a common language. Management is a little bit along the lines of command and control. This is what you do. This is what you're going to do. Here's a whip. It's more
right.
The stick versus the carrot. Leadership is, hey, there's a world that we live in, and I like to see you get here, or tell me where you want to go. And as long as that's in alignment where I want you to go, I'm helping lead you, but I don't have to manage you.
Correct.
By the way, just to be clear, I had a management team meeting. Actually, we shouldn't call it a management team meeting anymore. Thank you. I'm going to change that. We're going to call it a leadership team meeting. And we were talking about, hey, listen, I don't want to manage anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm here to support you, to lead you. If you don't want to manage yourself, it's time to find a new place to work.
Right.
Right. That didn't go over very well with some people I could see as I'm reading body language. But it's not, I want leaders on my team, not people who want to be told what to do. Now that's not everybody. There are people who will work for them who can tell others.
Right.
And so the question becomes, give you a great example. In New York City, I have cousins who live in New York City. Specifically, they live in Long Island. And their entire lives, they would always talk about the 2-hour commute to work each way. 2-hour commute. Like, this is normal. 5 days a week, 2-hour commute. Imagine you're spending 4 hours a day commuting, and then you go and you do your work thing. Like, you get home, you're going to sleep. Like, your kids, they don't see you by the time you get home. I mean, it's a crazy life. And that was normal, and that was okay, because it was what society said was normal.
Yes.
This COVID thing came around, and one of my cousins, for the first 3 months, were fighting, absolutely fighting. Oh, I can't wait to get back into the office. I'm so interested in getting back to the office. I saw her over the weekend, and oh man, we've got a hybrid model now, and if I don't ever have to get back into the office, I'll never do all this time I have, right? So the interesting part is that, and when you're hiring, by the way, if you have to hire for a physical location, you're stuck with the infrastructure, the cost, and the types of resources you have locally. If you can hire people who could work in different parts of the country or different parts of the world, now you have a different infrastructure. But guess what? You have to manage different, or you have to lead different.
Correct.
And so how do we get people to change? It's a great question, because I've been thinking a lot about I've been thinking a lot about that. I do it in my executive coaching when I work with people, right? It's just it's a complete mindset shift change. But how do you make it universal? It will happen over time, but there's some companies that are just not ready for the change. It's sort of, best way I could say this is there was a point in time during the dot-com days. I was that guy that go around to CEOs of VPs of operations. I say, there's this new technology company. It's called the internet. It's going to change the way we do business. Ken, I was actually physically escorted out of the door of 2 locations. The internet's a fad. It's not going to happen.
Yes.
Okay. So let me say for everyone who's watching now, there's a change happening. And the change is going to be centered around more of a leadership change. And those that are in both, I'm just saying, for lack of any better word, we'll say knowledge economy, that those are in the knowledge economy will have the opportunity to grow and lead and to live a lot more like you could work for somebody else and live an entrepreneurial life.
Yeah. That's
an attitude. Right.
Yes.
That's the people working for me. The truth is, I'd love them to come and say, Mitchell, there's these 2 or 3 things you've asked me to do. I need to do this other thing. Do you mind if I go and do it?
Right.
I'm like, great. Just let me know. Tell me how it works. And they might go, well, at some point in time, you may need to fund it a little bit more. Great. Keep me up to speed. Let me know. Right. And that's the person that I want on my team. Those are the people I want working with us. And it is, unfortunately, our educational system does not create that level. Our educational system is creating people to live in a command and control, sheep focused, tell me what to do society. And so that's part of what being an entrepreneur is all about. The question, what's going to happen is when entrepreneurship happens inside of these larger companies, so you're entrepreneurs within a larger entity, so therefore you have more resources. You have a financial sponsor, you have a credibility sponsor, you have an awareness sponsor, you have opportunities to reach a much wider audience, but you're still acting as an entrepreneur inside the firm with all those resources. Imagine the types of things that type of person can get done.
I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs that I've talked to that started a company while they were employed and their employer became their first client. It happens all the time. I would say probably 20% of all the entrepreneurs that I talk to live in that scenario where they left their company and now their company is their first big client, which is phenomenal. Anchor clients for startups are huge, especially if it's software, right? Brick and mortar is a little harder to do unless you're building a strip mall or something. But so super interesting. I've got a couple of stories. One of my gigs, I operate data centers, and it's required that you have to be there. Because people, when somebody's website's down, they got to go reboot the server. You have to physically be there. We don't have the robots good enough yet to drive around inside these data centers and boot stuff yet. And after the pandemic, we were critical services with hospitals and stuff like that. But we told all of our staff, the engineers, on your on-call weeks, you don't have to come into the office at all. You're on call, and 80% of my engineers come in on their on-call weeks. They still drive into the office, and they're like, I'm not productive at home. And I've got another set of staff that just, is always at home. So it's really, I think we're going to see a huge hybrid mix of all things are always possible in employment, right? And it's just super exciting, I think, for the future of business. I do see this change that you're talking about to leadership, right? And that difference between manager and leader. Do you think COVID was the pusher for that? Or do you think there's something else in the air? It feels like something in the air, right? When you're at some of these conventions and you're talking to people, something's changed in our world. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but it feels really good.
I think COVID was a lubricant.
Okay.
Right. This was happening anyhow. And COVID just made it happen quicker, faster. The change is really I probably, this is probably the thing I need to point to.
Yes.
This is to change, right?
But that's been around now for like, this isn't new anymore.
It's not. And it's how you use it that continues to grow and change. Best example, I with COVID, I wasn't doing a lot of traveling. I'm part of the Marshall Goldsmith's 100 coaches, and there was an event in Nashville, and I could not go, even though I wasn't traveling and I was a little, COVID concerned.
Right.
So I went to the event in Nashville. What was super fascinating, just beyond fascinating. First of all, what's cool about Nashville is everywhere you go, there's music. Every bar, daytime, nighttime. I even walked into the public library and there was somebody playing music. Like
in the library.
Like this is way cool. Way cool.
My first corporate job was at a library and they would have never let that fly in St. Louis.
Oh, I know. I've nowhere else have I ever seen that. What was interesting is they all had screens. Oh, actually, I did not go to any one location that didn't have a projector with an image behind them with the name of the person and a QR code where you could Venmo them a tip.
Yes.
Right? QR code. So if you wanted to tip the person, instead of standing up, reaching your pocket, getting cash, walking there, you take off your phone, you actually scan in the QR code and you tip. Now, that's obvious to me. I just hadn't seen it before. And I'm like, oh, that is super cool. That's a use of technology. How many times are you sitting around a meeting and you're talking to somebody, family gathering, somebody has a question? Like in the past, we let me walk over to the Encyclopedia Britannica and let me research that and see if it works. And now, if you have a family that's always fully engaged, when they're looking at their phone, they're looking at the phone to contribute to the next level of the conversation because it triggered something in their head.
Yes.
Right. And so hopefully, maybe it depends on your family or my family. Right. So what's interesting is technology it's so interesting. I'm still old school. I've got my team, creating WordPress sites and grabbing the URLs and the domain and doing the WordPress and doing it PHP and pulling stuff together. And, every now and then I see a new piece of software that automatically creates funnel software, user-generated graphics of the screen, everything tied together, all in one spot, $150 a month. I'm like, yeah, I think it's about time for me to change, right? And it's just.
Well, I can argue on that one all day long for you.
Oh, good. Either for or against, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
What's interesting is it goes back to the same level of questions before: time, money, ease of use, support, enjoyment.
Right.
Right. And so if you're starting a business today, you're now taking advantage of all the stuff you have at your fingertips. And Absolutely. The stuff that you have was so much different than.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Clicks and Bricks. Get to work.